Thank you. I'm honored to be with you today for your commencement from one of the finest universities in the world. Truth be told, I never graduated from college, and this is closest I've ever gotten to a college graduation. Today, I want to tell you three stories from my life. That's it, no big deal, just three stories. The first story is about connecting the dots. I dropped out of Reed College after 6 months, but then stayed around as drop-in for 18 months or so before I really quit. So why did I drop out? It started when I was born. My biological mother was a young unwed graduate student, and she decided to put me up for adoption. She felt very strongly that I should be adopted by a college graduate. So everything was all set for me to be adopted at birth by a lawyer and his wife. Except when I popped out, they decided at the last minute that they really wanted a girl. So my parents on a waiting list got a call in the middle of the night asking, "We got an unexpected baby boy. Do you want him?" They said, "Of course." My biological mother found out later that my mother had never graduated college and my father had never graduated high school. She refused she refused to sign the final adoption papers. She only relented a few months later when my parents promised that I would go to college. This was the start in my life. And 17 years later, when we were, I did go to college, but I naively chose a college that was almost as expensive as Stanford. And all of my working class parents' savings were being spent on my college tuition. After 6 months, I couldn't see the value in it, and I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. And here I was spending all of the money my parents saved their entire life. So I decided to drop out and trust that it would all work out okay. It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. The minute I dropped out, I could stop taking the required class that didn't interest me and began dropping in on the ones that looked far more interesting. It wasn't all romantic. I didn't have dorm room, so I slept on the floor in my friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposit to buy food with. And I would walk the 7 mile across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. I loved it. And much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Let me give you one example. Reed College at the time offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Throughout the campus, every poster, every ribbon, every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphed. Because I had dropped out, I didn't have to take the normal classes. I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying the amount of space between different letter combinations, about what makes a great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically thorough in a way that science can capture, and I found it fascinating. If I had never dropped in on the single course in college, the Mac none of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me, and we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. If I had never dropped out, I would never dropped in on the calligraphy class. And personal computers might not have the wonderful typography that they do. Of course, it wasn't possible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college. But it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. And again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dot will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your God, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Even when it leads you off the well on the path, and that will make all the difference. My second story is about love and loss. I was lucky. I found what I love to do early in my life. Woz and I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20. We worked hard, and in 10 years, Apple had grown just two of us in a garage into $2 billion company with over 4,000 employees. We had just released the finest creation, the Macintosh.